was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Now my shift is finally over, I gotta deal with what's mine and try to find a way to leave those tragedies behind. So I hug my 2 children, I kiss on my wife. Just another day, the first responder's life. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Flashing lights fill the air, broken bodies everywhere. Another bad dream is stealing my sleep. 'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.
Hey, welcome to the award-winning Mad Radio Show with John and Sam, your first responders network into healing our heroes through resources and workshops. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
Hey, it was another crazy week out there.
I know.
I'll tell you what, there's so much to talk about tonight, but we've got to compartmentalize, and I'll say stay sane, because you can go down a road and never come back.
Hey, just real quick. I know you're in Oklahoma. I'd like to hear just a little bit brief on that, because I heard you had a fantastic experience.
Yeah, so I am a brand new board member to a fantastic organization that we are going to have on the show at the end of the month called Heroes on the Water. They're already part of our workshops that we do for first responders. And there was a board retreat in Tulsa. And the first time I got to go kayak fishing and really be immersed in what they do, recreational therapy for our veterans and first responders is becoming more and more popular. And there is a reason for that, because when you are on a kayak, working with your fishing rod, trying to catch fish. I caught 2. Yay!
I was going to ask you.
I caught 2 fish. Little bluegills. So it's catch and release. That's what you're focused on. You're not really thinking about your head doesn't get to go into bad places, and you're surrounded with people that have been there. They get it. They understand. And it was especially poignant this weekend based upon what's going on in Afghanistan. And I just want to start off the show because, John, we have had and spoken to many a veteran, now first responder, whether they are police officers or firefighters. You and I did not serve in Afghanistan. We cannot even begin to imagine what you all went through, but the TBIs, the post-traumatic stress, that part we do get, since we both, have it ourselves. And we just want to say, I just want to dedicate the show to them, because the way that this is being handled is so wrong. I am sending out, John and I both, we're praying for you. Seriously. If you need to talk, please reach out. We are here to listen, and you should not be reliving. And I can only imagine the level of anger that a lot are going through. I connected with and spoke to a lot on Facebook today, and just let them know, hey, I'm thinking about you. Reach out if you need to, because it's like, I everybody that lost limbs, that lost, moms and dads that lost their kids, their sons that were fighting, their daughters. It's like, for what? So I know I don't need to apologize, but on behalf of the Americans in this country that actually believe in the mission and what you guys were doing over there, the real patriots of this country, we are behind you 100%. We do not agree with the way this is going down, and our hearts and our prayers go out to you. And so it was, like I said, very poignant this weekend, because we got a chance to talk.
Right.
And people got to just get it off their chest. And
when you said you immersed yourself in the aspect of Heroes on the Water, it was almost like when we went to our watch, and we were able to feel that dynamic in the equine therapy. These therapeutic alternatives to the couch are amazing ways to release inner trauma and start to begin healing. And I can't stress enough that if you're feeling that the couch does not work for you, there are so many other resources out there. And like Sam just said, getting out on the water with Heroes on the Water and going fishing, or going to equine therapy, or going mountain climbing, or doing something with like-minded people who've been there with you. Couch therapy is not for everybody. Some people, but not for everybody. And if you feel that couch therapy is not working, then you know what? Maybe we try something else. There's always some little thing that you're going to find that is going to begin that healing process within you, because everybody is different. Everybody's effects are different. Everybody's brain is different. Everybody processes things on a different level. So that's why PTSI is so complex in the treatments of it. That's why so many resources are available, and so many of these great organizations out there are helping our heroes heal through these different procedures.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, the recreational therapy is I highly recommend, even if call it traditional therapy is working, it is a way to be out in nature and connect with things that are just bigger than you, and realize that, we're these little tiny people in this huge big world, but that there
Yeah.
is something bigger, and it's always there. And when you need to rely on it, it's there, and it's just a beautiful.
And it gets your body moving. It gets your body
Oh,
moving,
yeah.
and the blood circulating. And what that also does, it releases chemicals into your brain
Mhm.
that
Those
also begin
endorphins.
the healing process.
Yep.
So there's a lot of great benefits on outdoor therapy and recreational therapy. So if you haven't heard of it, or if you haven't even tried it, make the phone call. At the end of the show, you'll see all our resources that we have available to you. They're partners with us. Please reach out to them. Look at their websites, and you never know. Maybe the first two don't help, but the third one will. So let's heal all together.
Yeah, and you know what's really cool is the family is included as well.
Yes.
So there were veterans with their spouses and their kids. We had 2 youngsters, pros. I'm like, how does this work? How does this? They're just like, let me go on the kayak.
Hey, was that the first time you were ever on a kayak?
No, I've been on a kayak before. I've just never been kayak fishing. I've never utilized it to fish, and it was really cool.
Now, explain the difference. I mean, you're kayaking, but now to kayak fish, you gotta get out there, right? And then you got a pole.
Kayak. So you have some of them are propelled by foot pedals, the old fashioned, but you sit on top. There's few kayaks that you're like down in, but it's mostly sit on top, and you have places for your poles and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a different kayak. I mean, I'm no expert from being out there, but the fact that we got to spend time with veterans and the families is what made the difference. And seeing the kids' smiling faces and everybody just being open to talking and sharing. And I think it fits exactly with what our guest tonight has been doing for many years. She is a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California. She's a member of a first responder family and a sister to 3 law enforcement officers, and she's married to a firefighter. You go. She's a very proud fire spouse, and very interestingly, she did her dissertation, and in the subject matter, she got to interview officers, spouses of officers, and adult children of officers to better understand the impacts of police work on the law enforcement family unit. She completed her postdoctoral training, providing treatment to law enforcement personnel and their family members. And she's had the opportunity to go on a lot of ride-alongs, attend live training for emergency responders, which has been helpful in developing an understanding of the day-to-day challenges of the job. And in October 2018, she released her book, The Firefighter Family Academy, a guide to educate and prepare spouses for the career ahead. And then in 2019, she opened her practice, First Responder Family Psychology. So we want to welcome back to Mad Radio. It's been a while. She's been super busy growing her own family.
There
Rachelle Zemlok, welcome back to Mad Radio. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I looked back. The last time I was here was May 2020. So
Wow.
I was pregnant, but probably not 12 weeks yet. So I hadn't talked about it. So since I've seen you, I've gone through a full pregnancy, newborn chaos. I have a 3-year-old and she's now almost 8 months. So I have a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old at home. And here I am.
And running a full practice.
And running a part-time practice.
Okay. Well,
right.
Part-time practice, but everything that you're doing that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Full-time.
Absolutely.
And Sam, and what gets me is she still has a smile on her face. She's got an 8-month-old, and she's got the world, all these problems coming on her. And look at her. She's glowing and she's smiling. She's like, oh, this is great.
Listen, it is fire season in California. Okay. It's hit hard. My spouse has just reached the point of being gone more days than home this month with all the force bags. And this is why I'm smiling, because Yes, he was forced back today. He was supposed to be home to watch them during this, but we had family coverage. So do you hear my office? It's quiet.
Quiet.
It's like, that is why I'm smiling. And, the grandparents are helping out.
Oh, it's
wow.
awesome. Yeah, my son's grandma lives right up the street from us, so I definitely know how that is a huge help. And John's dogs will just bark, so they'll probably fill in for the noise, and then his dogs often cause my dogs to bark.
Yeah.
Great.
Looking for where it's coming from. So we'll make up with that. Hey, well, let's dive right in because there's a lot to talk about.
Okay.
I want to let everybody know that the comment stream is open and live. So if you have any questions, go ahead, or comments, go ahead and post it there, and we'll make sure that Rachelle gets them and has an opportunity to answer them. And you just start off by saying it is fire season.
Yeah.
With everything going on in the world, I would say there's been a little less coverage, and it is massive. We're even hearing, at least the last what I heard is in certain areas, people are absolutely refusing to leave their homes. As we, so like if it's stress enough to fight the fires, but then it's like, come on, citizens, help us out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I focus on what's happening with the families because that's who I'm serving. And as a spouse of a first responder, I think it's important to have good boundaries around all the other stuff, all the news, because if I pay attention to like what you're talking about in the news, I can get really wrapped up in the worry around what's going on, what my spouse or people who, other firefighters who've been sent out, what they might go through. So I try to practice really good boundaries around news during this season as a way to self-preserve so that I can focus on what's important for our family and, of course, families in my practice.
Now, what you just brought up
is your spouse coming home, though, and like, letting you know what's...
Well, go ahead, finish. He is coming home because he has not been sent out. But what happens is there's certain, firefighters that sent out, but then that leaves 30 open positions. So everyone who stays home just gets mandatory back kind of over and over again until there. So whether your spouse is gone or here, it's like there's just a ton of overtime and mandatories, and you think you're going to see them and you don't. So you just kind of have to have a certain mindset that like they're gone. I need to figure it out. I need this support. Having family around is like a must as, a first responder spouse, but definitely a fire spouse during this season. So it's so helpful because I wouldn't be able to have work outside the home if not, right?
Right. Rachelle, I mean, what you brought up was the boundaries with the news.
Yeah.
That when we talk about post-traumatic stress, we talk about the stress of a family member, the news plays a really key role in what a lot of husbands and wives go through who have spouses on the jobs. How do you get into that mental mindset to be able to turn that off? Because I'm sure there's a lot of spouses out there that'll be like, when their husband goes to work, they need to turn on the news. They need to see what's going on. We're in the world of social media. So the alerts on the phone, how do you bring yourself into that mental mindset to give yourself a little, that boundary, that peace?
Yeah, I talk to spouses a lot about that a lot in preparing for fire season, because it's like, here it comes, your anxiety, first responder families, every member of the family is more likely to have anxiety. We know that from research. So spouses, it's the same with, veterans. And it's like the spouses, the kids are all at a greater risk for anxiety. So we don't want to raise that as much as possible. So during moments like this, whether it's, the protests and the riots or it's fire season, it's having very not just allowing things to take over your day, but for you to decide when and what information is important for you to have and when it's important to shut it off and be present, right? That's how you kind of preserve yourself. And so it's news, it's social media, it's friends and family members who might want to talk about it every time they see you, or maybe they reach out with a text about it. It might be you see it everywhere, right? So
Right.
it's like you really have to find a way to decide what are your boundaries and make sure that some spouses, and I say this, everyone's different. Does it raise your anxiety or does it help you feel in control? Because some people will say, I need to know because it helps me feel in control, but really they're very anxious and then they can't sleep at night and they can't be present with their, so you really have to know that about yourself. No, I can still sleep. I just, I feel better knowing where they're at. Like, okay, but you really got to do a check, right? Like, does it leave you riled up afterwards or does it calm you down?
Right. Absolutely. And so is that when you're preparing families for fire season? I know you've got a blog, like a regular blog that goes out. Are you doing this like in a group setting or are you doing this like virtually? I know you're in California, so I don't know how we're in Texas, so things are not as restrictive. Being in person. How are you preparing them? Exactly.
So a lot of virtual events have taken place and different organizations will kind of bring me in and say, hey, I have this, my audience that I talk to and I'd like to provide them with, this talk of like preparing for fire season. And I kind of start talking about that in May because, June starts rolling around. And for me, it's like all the departments around then are preparing for wildland training, right? They're getting all their gear out. They're going out and doing wildland drills, all these things. And it's like, okay, if the department is preparing for what's to come, why are we not preparing at home as a family, as a spouse, preparing your kids for what's to come? Because it's like, if we can, predict it, right, then we can prepare for it and try and manage it a little bit better. So I did some, virtual talks. I did do one in person, it was outdoors, but to get fire spouses from that area who wanted to connect together. I have had one department, which maybe we'll talk about, but one of our very large departments in California, the largest, has brought me in on a more regular basis. And that was one of the talks that we did for the family. And this department is spread out across California. So it's actually really hard to connect those families because they're so far spread out. So virtual is actually a real perfect way to get them connected and to know that like, oh, we're part of the same department, even though we're 7 hours from each other, because they don't get to see each other. So, so it's many different avenues. And I do have a video that I send out as well for those who can't make those talks.
Now, with the fires so prevalent in California, you have a lot of outside help from firefighters from different states that, those spouses are not really privy to this. They don't know what a wildland fire is, especially some of those that were coming in from Texas or Louisiana, or even as far as New York, to go help fight these fires. What would you say to them? I mean, because they are anxious that now they're 2,000 miles away, 1,000 miles away from their spouse in an atmosphere that they have no control of.
Yeah. And, I think we live, it's similar and different. It's similar in the sense that, when my spouse is gone, he's gone. Like there's no coming home, right? It's like 8 hours and, a flight away is kind of the same in this moment, right? Sometimes they don't have reception and you just don't hear from them for a couple of days. What I learned very early on is the news wants to make everything exciting. And when you're a spouse at home, you don't want excitement. You want very dull, boring information. So getting the information from your spouse is probably the best way because they're going to be talking about the most exciting thing that's going on, but your spouse could be doing something totally different that has a very different risk associated to it and never a part of anything like that, right? And so like to know that not everyone's doing the same thing, there are many, many jobs, and to just like, when you do talk to your spouse, like you can kind of get a sense of that and really the ins and outs of what they're doing, right? Also, keep yourself distracted. It's not helpful to just be thinking about the what ifs. Anxiety is what if. It's what if about what we cannot control. So you could do what ifs all day long. but we could do that with any of their jobs at any moment, right? It's not any different. So it's just kind of making sure that you're keeping distracted. I do imagine that those families have more of a choice in versus like California firefighters. There's a lot of them that feel like they'd have very little choice once everyone's getting sent out, and then they get back and more get sent out it's like, it's hard to miss being sent out sometimes.
Right.
And so you have less of a choice, and it lasts maybe a lot longer.
So while you're doing the virtual events for the spouses, how do the kiddos, because we'll have fire families, kiddos of all ages. How does that play in and with your programming?
Do you mean them being there, or talking about the kids?
Some like, what's the age? That you think is appropriate for a child to be brought into the conversation?
Okay.
And how would most likely it's the spouse at home that's going to relay the information to the child. How does that work?
So when I'm talking to families about preparing for fire season, I talk about it in May because usually the firefighters are still around at that point. And what I hope is that the whole family can prepare and address things, because the hard part about the spouse is that this is what is the common experience. It's coming. The weather's getting warmer in California. All the spouses are getting anxious, like, oh gosh, here it comes. The first call comes in, 3 a.m. and you're going, oh, great, here it is. And they're like, oh, I'm on my way to blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, okay, I don't know when I'm going to see them again. What am I going to do for daycare? What am I going to do for this? What pickup? What do we need to cancel? And everything just falls on you as a spouse, and you feel very alone. You're just trying to figure it all out. They're gone. They can't help. And so when I'm talking to fire families in the beginning, I'm saying, we know that's coming. So let's do it now as a family. Let's talk about, what do we need in place? What systems, what help do we need? Do we have family help? And yes, you can just be like, oh, we have family, but to actually give your family tools. Hey, if my husband goes out, here's what would be helpful. These are the 2 days I work. I'm going to need pickup on those days. If you go to the grocery store, please just keep me in mind and call me and ask if there's anything I might need. It's really hard to get to the grocery store with 2 little ones, by myself in these times. So it's really like thinking through the daily schedule together as a partner, right? Mm-hmm. And then that firefighter can help, because you're first responders. First responders want to know that their family is okay. Like at the end of it, they're gone and they're absent, and they're helpers, and they love their family the most. And so it's hard for them to know that their job is having such a significant impact on their family at home. I do this work sometimes with couples in therapy. Like, let's talk about fire season. Here it comes. What's it going to look like? And then we think through that process all together. I will tell you, the first responder is more relieved sometimes than the spouse, because they're like, oh, thank goodness. Like, I don't have to carry that burden of like, great, now they're at home and they're just miserable, right? And so it's like getting them on the same page, getting a whole plan, knowing, hey, you're going to sign up for Instacart because you're just not going to go to the grocery store. You're just going to have things ordered to the home. Like, I'm out, that's fine. So whatever it is for that family, they come up with a plan. The kid, you'd ask what age, all ages. It's just going to be a different conversation. I think that teenagers have probably been living it for their life, so they're kind of expecting it and know. But I think that the conversation around that could be, how are you feeling about this? What's going on for you? Do you have any worries? And then talking about responsibilities in these situations. Like, I always want to try. This is such an uncontrollable event, which a lot of first responder work is, right? So our kids, anxiety can kind of stem from feeling like you can't control your environment, and it's kind of scary and dangerous stuff, right? So when we can't control that, we want to find control in other places. So sometimes it's trying to help your kids find control and not using those words. So for, teenagers, it might be like, hey, you know how this goes. I'm going to be gone, this and this, it's going to be hard. Maybe you're talking about the events you're going to miss. Maybe they just started baseball, or maybe they, there's things. And so you kind of talk about, this is going to be really hard for me, but this is what I want to know. I don't want you to hold back on if you get this or this. send me a video, or, have, mom send me a text message, or some like have a way to connect about those really important things to teenagers. You're starting your first day of high school. I might miss it. Like, please remember everything and tell me about it. Like just making sure that like, it's not just like I'm gone and I just don't care about what's going on at home. And then to give the teens, I'm going to need some help. I usually take on this task and this task, mowing the lawn. Can that be your task? Can I count on you to do that? Right? Because then they take some ownership in, I got to do this thing. So I can't control what dad or mom is doing out there, but I can control this right here. This is my task. I can mow the lawn. I can make sure I do these things. And then when they come home, I can tell them about it. Right? So maybe for teenagers, that's it. And for little ones, it's the same thing, talking about worries, or just talking about, what do you think? Here it comes, fire season. And you don't want to lead them down a road. Are you really scared about this? You want to let them talk.
It's a leading question in court. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
Police probably get this more than firefighters,
Yeah.
right? But you don't want to like lead them on. You just want to know where they're at. Some kids will say they're really worried and scared and they're not going to be able to sleep. And other kids are going to be like, whoa, so cool. Like the helicopter is going to come and drop water. So you just let your kid go with where they're going to go with it. If they're maybe the worrier, or they're mad about it, or they're sad, you start talking about some coping skills. What are things that make you feel better when you're feeling really sad or you're feeling really scared? And you could start to make a list of them now in May before it comes, so that when they're worried and scared, predicting it, right? You go, oh, remember, we knew this was going to happen. Let's do some of those things we talked about before, right? And if they're excited about it, then you just kind of let them go with that. And then maybe with those kids, the parent can give them tasks to take on. Like, oh, I'm going to need your help, buddy. Like, you're going to have to be here with mom and do this thing for me, and just kind of let them go. Oh yeah, I can take this on.
What's a good age? What's a good age in a first responder, firefighter, or police officer, or any first responder medic, to start conditioning your child into those roles? Maybe not so much fire season, but to start conditioning them, saying, this is our family.
Yeah.
We are a first responder family. These are things that you may see, you may hear, you may worry about. What's a good processing age for a child to start understanding, and how do you approach that?
Hey, let them play with your handcuffs first.
That's
what hey, the tools of the trade. They come home. Hey, my son, when he was what's these for, mom? And you just start a conversation.
Believe it or not, I did that with my daughter when
not the gun, just saying putting that out there.
Really, what I did with my gun was I sat with her, and I think she was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and I made sure it was clear, and I put the gun out on a bed, and I said, play with it, take it apart, let me show you it. I took the whole curiosity aspect out of the gun, and I told her the gun safety and how dangerous it is. And then after a while, and two things happened with my daughter after I conditioned her, was she would never hug me when I got home from work. She would say, go put your gun away, so I'd go put my gun away. And one day we were sitting at the house, and one of her friends wanted to see my gun. It was in my drawer. They were in the house. They were young. They wanted to see my gun. So my daughter played sick and sent the kid home. And I was like, she came out in the backyard one day. She goes, her friend left. And I was like, why? What's the matter? She's like, well, I told her I didn't feel good. I said, are you feeling okay? She goes, no, but they were pressuring me to see your gun. And I know that is off limits. So I started around 5 years old, and it worked. And I'm wondering if that was the proper age to start doing that.
That worked. I'll be honest. I think that first responder family is like it's so much of your identity, because your whole schedule, your weekly schedule revolves around the department schedule. That's just how it goes, and it's not everyone else in the world's schedule. So it's very obvious that it's different. So I think that to always be talking about that, right? Or just introducing them, or maybe you visit them, at work, and, see the station or the the trucks, the cars, whatever, any ways that you can connect them to the work. Because something you mentioned my dissertation, something that kids who grew up in law enforcement families felt was really supportive to them was to feel connected to the department in the sense that like, I knew people's faces, I knew who they worked with, like I kind of understood what they did in ways. And when you're at home wondering what's going on, sometimes it's nice to know that like, oh, they're working with so-and-so and I know that person and they're a safe person, right? And so like I can count on them and it brings them some comfort, I think, to also know like that their parents spend so much time away, but they're doing something that they feel like other people, you know, we talk about we're helpers, right? And so like, you know, oh, is daddy home? Nope, he's helping people at work, right? And so like, I think it's helpful for kids to connect to a bigger purpose that usually the first responder is connected to. That first responder is leaving. They're not missing your birthday party because they want to. They're missing it because people need help. And you know, we kind of talk about like when my husband couldn't come home today, a way that we talk about it is like, he understands the whole, he could tell you all about firefighting, maybe more than a probie, but he, you know, understands like chain of command. And so when, you know, daddy was supposed to come home and he couldn't come home, we say that the chief needed him. The chief called and said, you can't go home. We need you. There's no one to maybe, you know, drive the engine or, you know, he just promoted. So he's not doing that anymore. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like for him to attach that, he knows what that means. Like it wasn't in daddy's control. He doesn't not want to come home and pick him up from preschool. Like the chief needed him because people needed help and there was no one there to do it. Right. So it's like, he's 3, but he can understand that. And he doesn't get sad about that. But if it's like, daddy can't pick you up from preschool today, I think he'd be sad about that if that's how I worded it.
Right.
You know, which goes into my next point of like trying to build a resilient first responder family. Because the spouse spends so much time at home with the kids, just managing all the like, I can't be there, I'm going to be there. It's like modeling is so important, which is why boundaries around news, if that makes you anxious, how I respond to what happens to my partner coming home, not coming home, going out is so important to like how my kids are going to respond to it, either now or in the future, because kids look to us for information. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Are we okay? Are we safe? And if I'm going, all right, here's the deal. Here's our plan. Daddy's not going to be home, but here's what we're going to do. That's a different message than like, oh, dad, he just got called out. Like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's a very different feeling. And I didn't say anything different, but the kid gets a different message.
Right. You know, talking about different messaging and seeing things, John, you know, before the show, we had a chance to talk about, you know, bringing first responder moms and dads into the classroom. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, this is when we talk about the narrative, and not so much with firefighters, because, you know, firefighters are always the heroes and they're always the ones on the calendars. Unfortunately, us law enforcement take a back seat at the donut shop. But, you know, there are a lot of kids out there that are families in law enforcement. And through the current national narrative that police officers are the abuse that they're getting, a lot of children are being bullied in school. They're being tormented because of the employment that their dad works at. You know, this is that same child that when they were in elementary school, or maybe in elementary school, and they had the career day, and dad came in a police uniform, and he was the hero. You know, he was your dad's a police officer. Now, you know, fast forward a couple of years later, now dad's the devil in some kids' eyes. How do kids respond to that? And
or your dad's a murderer, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, let's call it like it is. This is what kids are saying to kids.
Yeah, we're looking at a secondary trauma by what these children are seeing on the news and social media, with the narrative that even some of our politicians, respectable people in the community, are saying about our police officers. It's not just the civilian aspect. Now, you know, they see a politician start saying something bad. They're like, "Ooh, a respectful person, nice suit and tie, saying bad things about my dad or mom." You know, that's got to weigh heavy. That's got to weigh heavy.
Of course it does. It does weigh heavy. And I do think that parents try to be protective, and it's not only the kid, the spouses, the police officers, right? Nobody wants to mention who they are, what they do. They don't put a flag, at least in California. I mean, I'm in the Bay Area. I don't know what it's like there, but flags have come down off of their homes. Flags don't go on their cars because they feel like it's a target. It's a target on their house. It's a target on their car. It's a target on their kids, right? So I don't think it's just the kid, right? The kid's watching the family and the family's going, okay, like, we're not going to talk about this, you know? And it's not just the kid. It's like, we don't want them to be a target. So we're going to have to teach them some language around this to maybe sidestep that question or say something else. And, you know, I have teens that I see who talk about, you know, they're teens now, but they even talk about back when they were younger and going, oh yeah, I remember all the careers I used to make up for my dad. When someone would say, what does your dad do? They would just say something else. And now I don't know if that was a family decision,
but
or him decision.
Even right there, what you said, I mean, I'm getting that tightening in my stomach.
I know
what you're saying.
I know.
You know, you now you're telling a child to lie or skate around your dad or your mom's.
It's a sorry state of affairs that this country is in.
It really is.
It's
really hard.
You just said that, you know, well, don't tell anybody what dad does or what mom does. You know, right there, make the child go, well, is he bad? Is it not good to tell him?
Exactly.
It's such a fine line. It's so horrible that we have to do that to our children.
You know what was a slight protection was COVID. Everyone was at home and kids weren't in schools. And I remember thinking, this is such a benefit to law enforcement kids right now, where no one's in school while all this is going on, because that would be really hard. So it was like you could almost protect them for longer, right? As a way. And then now we're going back to school. So like, we'll see I mean, here, at least it's a little bit, we're finally, you know, starting school systems. So now it's like, okay, here it comes. So this is all new a little bit. I said, this kid remembers back then. It's a different level now. It's a different level of territory. And I have heard of families recently talking about moving because they've heard of some things that have already happened with law enforcement kids being targeted by advocacy groups and taking it upon themselves to point out and target law enforcement and just kind of pick on them, right? And so it's really hard. And what I'll say is like, the only thing, and I've thought about this over and over again, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I have a podcast called Code 3 Families that is for first responder spouses. Me and a best friend of mine, she's a police spouse and a psychologist, and I'm a fire spouse and psychologist, and we both have 3-year-olds and now under 1-year-olds. It's like amazing. Our lives just parallel one another. So we talk about this all the time at length, how different my 3-year-old is connected to the work and could tell you everything about firefighting, what his daddy's doing, what he's not. And when he got promoted to captain, he doesn't drive anymore. He gets direct. It's like this whole thing. And she hasn't exposed her kid in the same way, being from a law enforcement family. And actually, you know, she kind of talks about it real on there, just saying like, I'm kind of holding off. Like I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready. She doesn't want to like burst his bubble, as he's not in school yet. So she doesn't have to have, you know, different kinds of conversations. His dad's his hero, right? So she's like, I don't want to navigate this yet. So it's like, it's so hard and it's different for families. And everyone's comfort level is going to be different. It's going to be different based on where you live, right? And it's just, it's like, there's no good answer, but it's sad for these families for sure.
When does the podcast air?
Oh, sorry.
When does the podcast air? Because I'm going to put it in the comments.
So it's Code 3 Families with the number 3. And every Mondays is when it's supposed to come out. In fire season, it's been a little bit tough with less time myself to, get to it and edit. But it's usually pretty consistent on Mondays. But you can find it on any major platform. Oh, no, just Monday morning.
Okay, Code 3
It's not live. Yeah, it's not live. You can go back and listen to all of them.
Okay. All right.
You know, and this doesn't only apply to our firefighters and our police officers, our front, you know, the people that are out on the street. You know, this also applies to our nurses that are working in the hospitals right now, as well as the overstaff, the understaffing, the 16-hour shifts within this pandemic. So speaking to your child about what is going on, and letting them know from your point of view instead of them letting their mind do the what if is a much better aspect of it.
Yes. And what I'll add to that is that because we've talked about it at length and really thought about it, the only thing that I can come up with that is probably going to be the strongest part of how you keep, your kid really feeling proud is the relationship that kid has with the officer. Because I think that once you start moving into middle school and high school, right, those are the years of identity and you're trying to figure things out for yourself. And if the message doesn't align with the feeling, kids think differently. So if the message is, no, your dad, is doing the right thing and they're doing, and it's like, this is the message from the family, but they don't feel connected to their dad, say, and just, they're distant, they're distracted, they don't ask them about their, they're just gone. Right. I don't know if they're going to really side with that first responder when they get to an age of feeling like I get to make choices now, right? I get to decide what I think. So, because I've seen this with kids who in therapy who have a great bond with their first responder parent, and that pulls them through. Those kids who say things to them, and this is like a teenager, and they'll talk about all the terrible things that these kids say, and I go, how does that affect you? And they'll say, that doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I know what my dad is. I know that he's, and it's because his dad talks to him. They have a good bond, a relationship. He's proud of him. He introduces him to his work. So it's like a shield to all of those comments. And that to me was like, okay, this is it. This is the key. It's like that connection that you have that relationship because it could protect you from all the outside information.
That's great. That's great. Now you had a chance with is it with Cal Fire to bring in kids from ages 7 to 12, and you did a huge interactive activity to help teach the kids about managing, you call it big feelings.
Big feelings, yeah.
Yeah, and coping skills.
Yeah.
Take us through a little bit. We've got just a few minutes left, but take us through exactly what you did, because this is like where it gets tactical,
Yeah.
So for people listening that could employ and try the same strategies.
Yeah. So I think it's just starting out with a neutral conversation about like being a fire family. And we kind of talked about like, what are your favorite parts about it, right? You don't always want to go negative. And what are the hard parts about it? Not scary or sad, right? You're not influencing them. What are the hard parts? And kids kind of talked about that, and they shared and they brought it up, and they could all connect because there are other fire families there. And then we kind of talked about, we all have big feelings, and that's okay. And I call it a big feeling. These were kids 7 to 12. So I call it a big feeling, because it could be, I feel a lot of sadness. I feel a lot of anger, whatever it is, right? We all have big feelings. That's okay. They come and go. But it's important to know what feeling it is and what to do with that feeling when it comes up, right? And how to make it smaller. So we went over a little bit about, choosing a feeling, and talked about what level, like what makes you reach. Like we have like a thermometer, right? And when you're at the top, like what gets you there? When are you in the middle? What do you feel like at the bottom? Because there's a range of this feeling. And we actually did an interactive activity. So they all had things that I emailed ahead of time that they could print out and do. And and so they were kind of doing it with their parent at home, and then we pause and we come back, and then we talk about coping skills, which, you use other terms. You say, what are some things you could do to help you get lower on that scale, right? And so they kind of came up, and their parent, and I gave them a list of ideas, and their parent helped them come up, and I had them commit to maybe 3 things, right, to try the next time they were feeling that big feeling. And this is really helpful for parents, because parents tend to be the ones in the moment to come up with the idea, like, oh, you're feeling really sad. Why don't you go out and play? No, I don't want to go out and play. Why don't you go right? No, I don't. The kid's not. It's no. Like, I want to feel sad. So, parents kind of like, well, what do I do? But if you make something ahead of time, right? If you can predict it, do something about it now, so that when it comes up again, it's their ideas. They came up with these ideas. They committed to trying these things. Okay, what could happen? They try it and they go, that didn't work. So I try to tell parents, it's okay if it doesn't work. This is an experiment. You're going, oh, these coping skills didn't work. We chose the wrong ones. We got to choose new ones and we're going to try it again next time, right? So that they don't get really fixed on, no, I'm just sad and I want to feel sad. And sometimes you can just feel sad as long as you can come back out of it, right? So the whole point was just introducing like feelings are okay. They come up. It's important to know what brings them up, how big it is, and what we can do to help it like get smaller. And it's not going to go all the way away, and that's okay. Like we can still function when we're feeling a little bit sad or feeling a little bit angry. We all can, right? So maybe I should take this virtual activity with first responders.
I think so.
Yeah.
Like, let's do some coloring.
It sounds like, the EMDR, where's your stress level? Yeah.
It's the same, right? We all do it, but it's helping put it in kid terms, in drawing, in coloring, in a visual representation that they can put on in their room so that it's right there when they're feeling those feelings, right? So, and I just think with first responder kids especially, big feelings come up frequently, right? Like they didn't come home, they missed this event, they can't be there. And so it's like it's important to have some language around what do we do when that happens.
Sure. No, that's outstanding. I mean, the last thing you want is I would say in this day and time as an unprepared family, no matter what first responder role you're filling, and to have the kids as young as 7 to have ownership in that and give them the power not only to feel the way they want to feel and tell them, hey, it's okay, but to also have the parents on the flip side listening to this, because it's not us as parents doing the activity, it's you leading the activity. And sometimes we just need a good smack in the back of the head to be like, you need to let your kids feel sad. You need to let your kids, if they need to run upstairs and cry, instead of trying to fix it all the time, even though that's what we do.
Yeah, don't be a fixer.
Right.
That is the great smack in front of that. It's like anxiety and anger, all those big feelings. Your kids need to figure out how to solve it, or else you will be solving it for them forever. It's just like if you never let go of their bike. You're training and you just held onto the bike. You're going to be holding onto their bike into high school. So you got to let go, even though they might fall. So it's okay. You don't want to fix their problem every time. You could say, that's okay. I'm feeling sad. Okay, well, if you've tried and they just really want to feel sad, okay, well, let me know. I'm going to go do this other thing. I'm going to get dinner ready. You let me know when you're done feeling sad and we'll do some coloring. If they really don't want to it's okay, because for them to come around, that's such an important step for them in learning how to regulate their own emotions. Right. You can't be the one regulating their emotions or solving all of their problems, or they'll never figure it out for themselves, right? And it's within developmental age. But.
Which brings us into why kids are the way they are.
It's so funny because
it's a whole new topic.
It's so funny you say that, because it just brings my mind back to that commercial that's on with the lady with the cat on her shoulder, and the kid goes, "Mom, I fell." And she's like, "Get a Band-Aid." And she's like, "I'm bleeding. Get 2 Band-Aids." And she's just like feeding the cat, and not figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Which is hard for a lot of new parents, young parents. Before we do end, I do want to talk real quick about the Fire Academy and how you have been a positive effect on new first responder wives and spouses and husbands, bringing them into the fold and gearing them up for what is ahead of their first responder career.
Yeah, well, my book is kind of written for that, and I've had departments purchase it and give it to new spouses, because really what it is it's kind of like a guide or a manual that I wish was handed to me. Like I knew a lot of this information from school, but no one told me about it from the department. And what I realized is we're all just recreating the wheel. We're all failing, trying to figure it out, going, how do you do this life? How, you're not home for Christmas? It's like you go through all these steps. So this is really here's what to expect. And here are ways to navigate those conversations. Here are conversations to have ahead of time and figure out what are we going to do about, if you live in California, strike team season? What are you going to do about this? Or what is it like, what are different people in the, like my husband just promoted to captain. I already understand what that means because we had that conversation ahead of time. It's a lot more, it's like my promotion too, right? Like I have a lot more work at home now, right? But we had that conversation and knew it. It wasn't just something that happened. Like, and I always say there's not a thing that happens for him at work that does not affect us here at home. So to not have that conversation and bring me into the loop, into the department, kind of like what's going on and how do we navigate this, to me is like crazy making, because it's like everything that happens at work affects us somehow at home.
Well, I just seen by you using the lingo, the strike team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I heard that too.
Which is really cool, because now if you're hanging around and go, oh man, it's strike team season, and all of a sudden this new spout goes, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
So
I thought they were firefighters, not cops. Yeah, right.
Knowing the lingo is really that's good, and I see that know it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of have to work with a lot of first responders.
Yeah.
It's helpful, which is helpful in therapy and couples therapy, right? Because what I notice is that when first responders come in, they're kind of resistant to couples therapy. But something that happens is like in there, I'm working on both ends here. Part of it is, maybe what's happening at home. And the other part is helping the spouse understand some of the impacts and why that's playing out that way at home. And sometimes the first responders like, I couldn't have said that better myself. It's almost like they hadn't thought about it that way, but they're like, yes, that is what's happening.
That's why sometimes we need that set of eyes that's out here, because since we're in it every day, it's hard to have that separation. And let's just face it, after 12, 15, 18, 20-hour day, we don't really want to have that conversation. No. And so, you do a lot of prep work. So I've got your website up on the screen. So firstresponder.familypsychology.com. Can they get the book there?
Yep. Yeah, you can get it there. You can get it on Amazon. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So everybody, when the show's over, check out Rachelle's website. She's got a ton of information, and you can sign up right on the homepage to have her blog posts delivered right to your email. So it's automatic, it's scheduled, and it is really super interesting reading. And prepare. That's what I get from all of your stuff. It's like, don't leave. This isn't preparing your family by the seat of your pants. You got to bring them into the fold. And I love what you said about especially bringing the kids and making them feel like they're part of the department as much as we can. And that's important. We always ask our guests to take a minute and just give a message to all of our first responders out there. So what would your message be?
I think that it's important to know that, like I said, everything that happens at work, but for the first responder, it's like everything that you bring to work that makes you a good first responder sometimes doesn't play out so well in your relationships. And it's important to understand that there's a difference there. And if you find that it's having an impact that you do not want at home, sometimes it's just getting the insight on like how it's good at work and not so great at home. And how do we make that transition? And sometimes it's easier than you think it might be to get that insight and implement it. Like, it doesn't have to be this massive task. Like, sometimes it's just like small stuff that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Well, Rachelle, thank you so much for joining us once again. And, we're going to keep watching how your family grows, how your practice grows. Please let us know about all the new things that are coming out so we can push that out through a badge of honor on our social media streams as well. We really appreciate your time. We wish you and your family all the best. Prayers go out to you guys for a safe fire season, and hopefully you'll see your husband soon.
Tomorrow, please. Okay.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So much. Take care. Bye. Okay. Wow. It's just like, on, right?
You know,
So much.
the fires in California, I can't imagine, the law enforcement went through the 2020 protests, in the beginning of 21 protests, and they have to gear up all the time for these, because you never know when a protest or a violent outbreak is going to happen and you're going to get called in. Here, they can almost predict when fire season is going to happen. So you have to kind of gear up. Man, it's not easy being a spouse of a first responder, but you know what? She brought up a lot of good things where, the what ifs and whatever is predictable is preventable. So to try to ease into the situation before it strikes you blindly,
Prepare.
and prepare for it, like anything else. Be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. And
Absolutely.
and try to do the best by your kids, to keep them in check, and not, even if you're anxiety ridden, try not to push that off to your kids.
Yeah. And speaking of preparing, me, Jeff, and John, we've done a lot of behind the scenes work in getting a badge of honor launched as a 501c3. We did it. We are that. We have got this is just the beginning. We've got a tremendous amount of work ahead of us, and it's work that we're dedicated to. It's what gets us out of bed every morning. When you find your passion, I mean, it lights a fire and you're just go, go, go. And it's like, yeah, sleep, whatever. And no, sleep is important. Sleep is very important.
Yes.
But, it is a time right now for everybody to just take a minute and reflect. Think about the first responders, all of that. We're back in school now. The craziness of COVID, the craziness of our the fires in California, the craziness of what's going on in the world in Afghanistan, our veterans, getting gut punched again. Everybody, we're all in the same boat here. We've got to support one another. We've got to be there for one another. If you find that you want to reach out, that you need to reach out, a badgeofhonor.com. We're right there to help. You can scroll down on the homepage. We've got a list. It's all by logo of every 501c3 and more that we're aligned with, that all you have to do is click on their logo. Boom, you have their information. Reach out, because you truly are not alone. You have a family of wellness and healing around you, and we just want you to know that we're with you 100%. Absolutely. And I'll be out. A big shout out to DPD. I'll be out there tomorrow afternoon with the recruit class with Mr. Hollywood, Jonathan Hill. Again, it's so very cool to be able to talk about a badge of honor and let the recruits know, hey, this is the beginning of your career. Thank you, number one, for stepping up in such a crazy time. And number two, there's always going to be a time that you need to reach out and talk. Let's get the stigma, let's smash it, and let's start that conversation.
Exactly.
Just so privileged that we get to be a part of that. And to all the first responders out there, we are praying for you. Thank you for what you do. You are valued in our society, and keep up the fantastic work. Again, you are not alone. And to all of the veterans, you are not alone either. Right here, we're thinking about you big time. To everybody that's still over there trying to get back, we're praying that you will come back safely. Thank you for all your hard work and your dedication to keeping us free here so we can do shows like this every week. John, take us home.
Rachelle said it the best. What's predictable is preventable. So looking out for your healing is very important. And the best way to heal, when we talk about resources, on the 22nd of every month, come out to Heroes Bridge in Rockwall, Texas. We walk the bridge. It's an hour of chatting, walking, talking, just being next to family, friends, and supporters, and you get off that bridge, and after an hour walk, you feel a little better, you heal a little bit more. So if you're feeling stressed, come out, join us on the 22nd of every month. I know it's a tough time right now, but come on out. You're more than welcome. Kid and pet friendly. Start to heal with the people who are here for you.
Amen to that.
Amen.
And until next week, everybody, take care.
All right.
Be safe.
Thanks for joining in.
Bye.